look at the weather.
It's beautiful here.
Non-stop rain.
Oh, man, it is a blazer out there.
It's cold and it's shivery.
It is cold.
Really coming down here.
I really enjoy your weather reports.
From the All Indiana Podcast Network, we're talking weather in a whole new way. From historical events to what's coming up, plus weather news, science, safety, fun facts, and more.
I like where this is going.
This is Weather Weekly. Weather Weekly with Wish TV Storm Track 8 meteorologist Marcus Bailey.
It is episode number 79. Good to be with you here on Weather Weekly. I am meteorologist Marcus Bailey here in Indianapolis at Wish TV. Good to be with you here. Nice rains over the weekend. Some big-time rainfall numbers for parts of east central Indiana. Now, still didn't help our drought situation for most of central Indiana, but it did aid in some isolated areas, probably releasing some of the drought issues across our area. I want to go back. I'm looking at the tweet the Weather Service put out, the tweet a Weather Service put out on Monday afternoon. And some of the numbers from Sunday officially were pretty high. Muncie, 5.58 inches, just shy of 3 inches in Anderson, and Elwood about 6 inches of rainfall. Even Noblesville just shy of an inch. Here in Indianapolis, we were about 0.67. So, not awful, about 2/3 of an inch. Greenwood was about an inch or close to it. Franklin was about 1.33 inches. So these were pretty good numbers here. We certainly could use a little bit more. I know a place like West Lafayette and Crawfordsville, you were about 1/4 of an inch or just shy of that. And again, since the last time we talked, the drought monitor came out last Thursday. And we'll get a new one coming up this Thursday. But much of central Indiana now and considered a moderate drought. And that does include the entire Indy metro area. Now, the expectation is with some areas getting as high as 8 inches of rain up around Delaware and Madison counties, that some of that may get trimmed back a little bit, especially in the east central portions of the state. We'll likely see at least the drought conditions continuing around the metro area and points west. But I do think there will be at least a little bit, not a lot, a little bit of improvement in terms of that. So nice to get some welcome rain, though, across much of the state, at least if it was brief on Sunday. All right, coming up, we're going to do a little bit of everything here, kind of a hodgepodge. I do want to focus on, since the drought, is still an ongoing story, I haven't really touched much on ag stuff. And we're obviously in a big ag state here, corn and soybeans and that. So I want to give a quick update on what's happening there and a quick article that Purdue Ag put out about how, we still may be okay. We still have a ways to go before we hit harvest here and why we're still in pretty good shape. So we'll talk about that. I also do want to briefly hit up on the record-breaking heat that is now encompassing all of Europe, including Britain, which breaking a lot of records up that way. So we'll talk about that. That's coming up next here on Weather Weekly.
Audible's romance collection has something to satisfy every side of you. When it comes to what kind of romance you're into, you don't have to choose just one. Fancy a dalliance with a duke, or maybe a steamy billionaire. You could find a book boyfriend in the city and another one tearing it up on the hockey field. And if nothing on this earth satisfies, you can always find love in another realm. Discover modern rom-coms from authors like Lily Chu and Allie Hazelwood, the latest romantasy series from Sarah J. Maas and Rebecca Yarros, plus Regency favorites like Bridgerton and Outlander. And of course, all the really steamy stuff. Your first great love story is free when you sign up for a free 30-day trial at audible.com/Wondery. That's audible.com/Wondery.
All right, episode number 79. Thanks for coming along here. We'll kind of do a few little different subject matters, but I think both are important. One more locally. but one is making big weather headlines across the globe. So first, I did want to quickly or briefly hit up, and I'm not going to pretend to be some sort of agricultural expert here. All right, I'll leave that to the ag people, the farmers. They know a lot more about weather impacts and that kind of stuff. But I did want to kind of bring up a couple of things here. One of the more recent crop numbers that I have seen still isn't too bad. This came out on Monday. Indiana's corn crop now rated at 45% good to excellent. Indiana's soybeans are 46% good to excellent. That is according to the USDA, that their weekly crop progress report. Now, that is a drop over the last week, 47% and 49% respectively, corn and soybeans. So it is down a little bit, and I don't think that should be much of a surprise considering how dry we have been. Although some of that could be due to some pretty hefty rains as well. Up in, and I mentioned it before the break, up in Madison and Delaware counties, there were some areas that picked up 8+ inches of rainfall in about a 12-hour stretch. So not great. Ran into an interesting article though, and I guess there's a saying for some farmers, maybe not for everybody, but it was brought up by this professor that is, the Purdue Extension soybean specialist. His name is Sean Castile. Gave an interview to Hoosier Ag Today, and he was quoted as saying, it goes back to what his grandpa says, I'd much rather have a dry June than a dry August and September. And so Castile kind of goes, I'm not going to read the whole article here. It's a good read, though. Again, it's HoosierAgToday.com if you want to check it out. And it's the Purdue soybean specialist. But basically kind of goes in talking about how, the root system is still it's more important what's going on right now at this point underground than what's coming up over or out of the ground. In fact, it may be working to the farmer's favor that, everything is not too leafy and crowded just yet, right? And that's why, you'd rather have this kind of dry spell now as opposed to maybe a month from now or a month and a half from now. So sounds like even though we've been running dry, I think, I was kind of hinting at this, and certainly if you've been out and about, you've seen that while maybe crops are getting a little bit stressed, overall, corn and soybeans both look pretty good. Just from a non-expert eye that drives around, rural areas and grown up around it most of my life, but I don't know the first thing about really farming at all. Look, I'm lucky if I can get a good garden going. My tomatoes look pretty good right now. So do my cucumbers. And I haven't, had to go crazy watering a lot of those. I mean, certainly I've had to add some, and that's something that a lot of farmers just don't have the luxury of doing. But I mean, if you do look around, there is some stress, but maybe not awful. And again, you compare it to when we had a really, really bad drought, 2012, nowhere close. I mentioned on the air today, from the June 1st to the 18th of July, so essentially June 1st to present day, we picked up just over 3 inches of rain in Indianapolis. That's 3.01 officially. It marks the 11th driest on record in Indianapolis in that time frame. But you want to compare that to 2012. 2012, we had less than a half an inch. And that's obviously the driest in that time frame. So we're nowhere close to that. We have some work to do, but we're certainly in better shape than we were back in that really bad drought-stricken year. So you want to know a little bit more about all that ag stuff, go check out the, again, Hoosier Ag Today. They have their own podcast, too, and it's good stuff if you want to learn a little bit more about that. Okay, the other thing I wanted to mention was the issues in Europe, where we've got some significant issues with heat. Pretty fascinating, where we're getting near record heat across, most of Western Europe. It's pretty incredible. I know that records were set in many locations in the UK. I also know that we have some issues in France. They even have wildfires that are going on. So according to the Met Office, which is basically like the National Weather Service in the UK, for the first time ever, 40 degrees Celsius has provisionally been exceeded in the UK. London Heathrow reported a temperature of 40.2 degrees Celsius. So that would be 103-ish, if you want to do quick math Fahrenheit. So again, you got to keep in mind, think of latitudes here. The UK is much farther north than most of the continental United States. So this kind of heat is extremely rare for the UK. I mean, if any of you watched the British Open over this last weekend, they were up in Scotland, so that's way north. Now, I mean, they were still wearing sweatshirts, but there was at times that they were removing their sweatshirts even with a kind of a strong wind there coming off the North Sea. Because it had gotten pretty warm in the heart of the afternoon there, which that just never really. When you're playing the old course that far north, doesn't happen even this time of year. So, pretty warm. Just kind of going through some of the articles here. So a new preliminary all-time record high temperature has been hit in the United Kingdom. The European heat wave reaching its peak on Tuesday. The new record was first set in Charlwood, England, which hit 39.1 degrees Celsius or 102.4 degrees Fahrenheit late Tuesday morning, local time. That beat the previous record high bar set in the United Kingdom nearly 3 years ago on July 25th, 2019, when Cambridge Botanical Garden hit 38.7 degrees Celsius or 101.6 degrees Fahrenheit. Just a short time later, the country's new all-time record mark climbed even higher. London's Heathrow, I mentioned that airport, reported a temperature of 40.2. That's 104.4 degrees Fahrenheit at 12:50 p.m. local time. Since it's still early in the day as we were recording this all-time record high for the United Kingdom could wind up even hotter. Earlier Tuesday, the Met Office said the United Kingdom also had its warmest daily minimum temperature on record. Some locations did not fall below 25 degrees Celsius. That's 77 degrees Fahrenheit for a low temperature Tuesday morning. That's rough stuff. That's rough even in the United States. Certainly here in the Midwest. Now that may be a little more typical in tropical areas like Florida, anywhere along the Gulf Coast, certainly. But man, that far north, that's rough. The record-breaking heat is part of a deadly multi-day heat wave that has also set all-time records in Portugal, Spain, and France over the past few days. Relief from the oppressive heat will arrive in the United Kingdom on Wednesday, so they're finally going to start to kind of cool things down. But I had mentioned I don't have actual official statistics on this, but central air is not as widespread and available for many in Europe as it is here in the United States. So with that in mind, a lot of people have stayed home, but again, they're having to deal with, no air conditioning. And so they're having to deal with this kind of heat. Even with numbers in the mid and upper 70s overnight, you're not getting much relief from the heat. That's just awful. In addition to that, I mentioned the wildfires are a problem. It forced tens of thousands of people from their homes. Hundreds of deaths have been blamed on the high temperatures. At least one airport has shut down and rail travel is suspended in some parts as the heat wave continues. More than 31,000 people have been evacuated over the past week due to wildfires in parts of France. Several areas in the western part of the country hit all-time record highs with temperatures rising as high as 108 degrees. In Spain, the bodies of two people who died in a wildfire were found Sunday and Monday in northwest Zamora province. Meanwhile, Spain and Portugal have reported at least 748 heat-related deaths. 748 heat-related deaths so far this month. So, yeah, it's just, that's tragic. That kind of number, you're talking just less than 800 people have died because of the heat. But it's a different scenario out there than it is here in the lower 48. But again, it does look like relief is on the way here for this Wednesday. For much of Europe after just struggling for the last week. So we'll keep an eye on that. But again, a big story, not only with the heat, but with the wildfires as well. We're going to be dealing with our own heat wave, not that bad, but pretty bad heat kind of rolling through the Midwest over the next several days. We'll talk about how long we could have the heat stick around, and that's in my forecast next here on Weather Weekly. Here's a look at the forecast for the week of July 18th. Pretty quiet here for much of the week, and now another heat wave building. The day that this is released, which will be Wednesday the 20th. Pretty hot day, highs in the mid-90s, and humidity is sky high as well, so your feels like temperatures likely close to 100 to 105. I think at least near 90-degree temperatures are going to be with us for the foreseeable future here through the end of the weekend, probably even a little bit beyond that. The national blend of models, which we kind of use, especially as we get into kind of the medium range there, taking us into early next week, does sneak us down in the mid-80s. Might be possible with probably our next best chance for rain, which would come Sunday, but more than likely Monday, and that could kind of cool things down a little bit. I'm not anticipating anything major, but it looks like the overall theme by midweek, Wednesday and Thursday, has highs back in the upper 80s. A lot of our overnight lows are going to be kind of around 70 to 75, so it's going to be very stuffy through the overnight hours. That will take us well into next week. The 8 to 14 day outlook, a pretty strong signal for above average temperatures. There is a hint, maybe especially in southeastern Indiana, of above average precipitation there. So that's some good news. There. And again, I mentioned the drought monitor. And no changes to the monthly drought outlook. We'll get something a little bit later into the month. We mentioned that the drought development likely is still the forecast, but we may end up, we may change that a little bit, considering some of the rain that we've had in some spots and the potential that there is some rain in the cards here, at the end of the 8-day forecast here as we get up for the weekend. So we'll keep an eye on that. Fingers crossed that we'll get some rain here and help out those farmers a little bit. Thanks so much for joining us here for Weather Weekly. Certainly appreciate your time. If there's any subject matter you'd like to hear covered here on Weather Weekly or somebody you'd like us to interview, shoot me an email, marcus.bailey@wishtv.com. You can also hit me up on social media at Marcus Bailey on Twitter and Instagram, and Marcus Bailey Weather on Facebook as well. While you're here, make sure to check out all the other great podcasts, all part of the All Indiana Podcast Network. We'll talk to you next week. Have a good one, and God bless.
Discover more from Storm Track 8 Weather and Wish TV. Online at wishtv.com, and when you follow Wish TV on Facebook. Plus, be sure to check out more great podcasts from the All Indiana Podcast Network now at allindianapodcastnetwork.com.